What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What happens when one of America's most powerful former health officials refuses to answer even the simplest questions under oath? In this explosive Senate exchange, Dr. Anthony Fauci repeatedly invokes the Fifth Amendment as a senator accuses him of using federal employees and taxpayer-funded resources to pursue major cash awards during the pandemic. But does his silence prove anything? Or is this a carefully calculated legal strategy in the middle of a hostile political hearing? Watch closely, because the questions become more serious, the accusations become more personal, and the tension inside the room rises with every unanswered response. Stay until the end, because after the footage, we'll separate the confirmed facts from the allegations and explain what this confrontation could mean next.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the Fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyer is sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it?
Is that a question?
It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B, it says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards, and you did all of it, and the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor, and you were playing one on TV, but this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambaste Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fetterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci.
And as the microphone moved to the next senator, the most important fact remained hanging over that hearing room. Nearly every substantive question had gone unanswered. The exchange was aggressive, personal, and politically explosive. But beneath all the shouting, accusations, and repeated invocations of the Fifth Amendment, there is a serious issue that deserves a careful examination because what viewers just witnessed was not a conviction, and it was not proof of guilt. It was a confrontation filled with allegations that now demand evidence, context, and clear answers. The biggest takeaway is not simply that Dr. Fauci refused to respond. It is the specific nature of the accusations being made. According to the senator in the clip, federal employees, government email accounts, taxpayer-funded work time, and agency resources may have been used to support applications for private cash awards. The senator also claimed that staff members contacted ethics officials and pushed for approval so Fauci could personally accept those awards. Those are serious allegations, but they remain allegations unless the underlying emails, financial records, ethics opinions, and agency policies establish exactly what happened. A dramatic hearing can raise legitimate questions, but it cannot replace a complete investigation. The public deserves to know whether the documents were presented in full, whether the employees were performing authorized official duties, whether ethics lawyers approved the arrangements, and whether any regulation was actually violated. That distinction matters because the senator repeatedly treated Fauci's silence as if it were an admission. Legally and logically, invoking the Fifth Amendment is not the same thing as confessing. A person may refuse to answer because counsel believes a response could create legal exposure, contradict previous testimony, or become part of a future proceeding. Viewers may find that silence frustrating, especially when the questions involve public money and public employees, but frustration is not evidence. At the same time, Fauci's refusal to answer even harmless questions about the day, his tie, and the carpet created a powerful visual moment. His attorneys may have advised him to invoke the privilege consistently rather than answer selectively. That could be a legal strategy. Politically, however, it looked deeply evasive. When a former senior government official will not answer even the most basic question, many Americans will naturally wonder what his lawyers are trying to prevent him from discussing. Then there is the pardon argument. The senator claimed that Fauci no longer had a valid Fifth Amendment privilege because he had been pardoned. That issue may be more complicated than the clip suggests. The effect of any pardon would depend on its exact wording, the conduct it covers, the jurisdictions involved, and whether truthful answers could still create exposure for matters outside its scope. That legal question should be resolved through proper proceedings, not through a senator declaring the answer from the dais. The second major issue is the use of government personnel. Public officials often receive awards, honors, and speaking invitations connected to their official work. Staff members may also prepare biographies, verify achievements, coordinate schedules, or respond to outside organizations. The critical question is where legitimate administrative support ends and prohibited personal benefit begins. Were employees simply compiling information about Fauci's public service, or were they actively campaigning for awards that delivered substantial personal payments? Did ethics officials approve the activity in advance? Were the awards given to Fauci individually, to an institution, or for public interest purposes? The clip raises these questions, but it does not answer them. The senator also connected the alleged award activity to the enormous loss of life during the pandemic. Emotionally, that comparison is powerful. Politically, it is designed to suggest that while Americans were suffering, senior officials were focused on personal recognition. But the timing alone does not prove that pandemic responsibilities were neglected. To establish misconduct, investigators would need to show what government resources were used, how much time was spent, who authorized it, and whether official duties were compromised. The personal attacks near the end of the exchange may energize supporters, but they also risk distracting from the strongest factual questions. Calling someone a narcissist, a liar, or a megalomaniac may produce a viral clip. It does not establish a regulatory violation. In fact, the more personal the hearing becomes, the easier it is for the central issue to get buried under partisan outrage. And that central issue is accountability. Americans should be able to ask whether powerful officials follow the same ethics rules imposed on ordinary federal workers. If documents show government employees were improperly directed to secure private financial benefits, there should be consequences. If the work was reviewed and approved by ethics officials, that should also be made public. Transparency cannot apply only when it helps one political side. What happens next will matter far more than the insults exchanged in this room. Congress could demand the complete email chains, award applications, ethics determinations, payroll records, and communications with the organizations involved. Inspectors, general or other authorities, could examine whether federal resources were misused. Fauci's legal team could also challenge the senator's claims and provide documentation showing that the activity was authorized. Until that evidence is fully examined, viewers should resist two equally tempting conclusions. Refusing to answer does not prove the allegations. But holding a respected position in government does not make those allegations unworthy of investigation either. So, what do you think? Was this a legitimate effort to uncover possible misuse of public resources, or did the political theater overwhelm the search for facts? And does Fauci's repeated silence make you more suspicious? Or do you see it as a lawyer-directed response to a hostile hearing? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe for more political updates and analysis.